Hello everyone, welcome back to ICS Mahesh PU College, Dharwad. I am Murali Hegde, lecturer in English. Dear friends, we have been dealing with second PUC English literature part, and in today's video we are going to deal with William Butler Yeats' When You Are Old. Before we start the poem, let us have a look at William Butler Yeats about information in brief. Dear friends, William Butler Yeats is an Irish poet and one of the greatest poets in the English language of the 20th century. He was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. He is one among the greatest love poets of the world. When You Are Old is comprised of 3 stanzas, each containing 4 lines. The rhyme scheme is very distinct and steady, while the work is relatively short. Like any Yeats poem, it is jam-packed with imagery and other poetic devices. When You Are Old is a short lyric of 12 lines in 3 stanzas. The poem is the product of the earlier period in Yeats' poetic career. This is a love poem addressed to the poet's beloved Maud Gonne, who was the most beautiful young lady of his time. He is believed to be the inspiration behind this poem. The tone of the poem is one of the melancholy. William Butler Yeats imagines her future years and his true love in future. He repents over her divergent attitude who fails to understand his spiritual love. The poet begins the first stanza addressing her, imagining her to be in her old age. The lady will be very old, approaching her peaceful years. She then opens the book of poems penned by the poet. As she starts to read slowly, she is taken back in time to recollect her past, while she had innocent look in her eyes and sadness hidden in the looks of her eyes. The poet also says that his beloved would also regret how many loved her physical grace, but only the poet worshipped her pilgrim soul even as her face changed. At last, the lady will grieve over the loss of the true love, fleeing from her and joining a crowd of stars very distant from her. Thus, the poet expresses his future intentions while his beloved fails to understand. Dear friends, first of all, let us glance at the themes of the poem. First of all, we can find love, hate and beauty, a combination of these 3 themes in the poem. When You Are Old is a bittersweet poem that reveals the complexities of love. The poem is generally taken to be addressed to Maud Gonne, an Irish actress with whom Yeats was infatuated throughout his life, and said. The poem can also be interpreted more broadly without specifying the names or genders of either of the speaker or the addressee. In any case, the poem argues in favor of a kind of love based not on physical appearances but on the deeper beauty of the soul. In the first part, the speaker asks the addressee to think ahead to a time when she will be old, tired, and grey. Then says the speaker, the addressee will look back nostalgically on her life to date, thinking of her youthful looks and vigor as though they were a dream. Those who love the addressee now are portrayed as a superficial and insincere. The speaker implies that the so-called love of these men for the addressee will fade, just as the basis for that love will fade too. The speaker contrasts his own love for the addressee with the inferior love described above. The speaker's love, the poem argues, will stand the test of time because it is based on the addressee's pilgrim soul and the sorrows of her changing face. That is, the speaker pursues an inner restlessness of this woman's soul and implies that this will express itself in her changing face as she grows old. The speaker then claims to experience love that goes beyond the surface. The addressee's face may change over time, but the soul that the speaker loves will not. Furthermore, the pilgrim-like quality of the addressee's soul might be the very reason why she seemed to have denied the speaker's love. It sounds like the addressee refuses to settle down, mean that the speaker is expressing love not just in spite of being rejected, but in part because of it too. With the above in mind, though the speaker isn't exactly painting a rosy picture of the addressee's future, in essence, the speaker is predicting a lonely scene, one in which this woman has only a fire, a book for company. Indeed, the speaker predicts that it will be through reading this book refers the one in which the poem appears, that the addressee will be reminded of her youth and ultimately her failure to embrace love when given the chance. The speaker is suggesting that the poem itself will stand as a testament to the speaker's true form of love, when the shadow of love of others is nothing but a distant memory. He further says, alright, the poem in this tone, which expresses a complicated sentiment, then attesting to the power of love as well as its limits. Indeed, there is a hint of bitterness in the way the speaker predicts that the poem itself be a reminder of how love fled from the addressee. But whatever the complexities, there is no doubting the speaker's strength of feeling, and through the poem, the reader is reminded that true love of the kind described is rarely simple, easy, or certain. In this way, we can see the themes which is amalgamated with love, hate, and beauty. The other theme in the poem we can find is the past, present, and the future. The past is the proposal of the poet to that beautiful lady. Present is that her rejection, and the future, very importantly regarding the future, the poet writes or the poem says. The poem has a fairly bleak outlook on aging, with the speaker suggesting to the addressee that life will grow sadder and lonelier as youthful beauty fades away. The speaker links the enjoyment of life to the addressee's youth. As the poem argues that the addressee should make the most of the younger years she still has left. Through the speaker's words to the addressee, the poem argues that time passes by quicker than people realize, and that once youth is gone, it is truly intolerable. The poem takes an imagined look into the future day-to-day existence of the addressee. It shows a picture that contrasts sharply with the vibrant and vivacious life that this woman seems to have been living at the time of the poem's writing. Old age is depicted in the first stanza as a time of passivity. The addressee is falling asleep by the fire, grey-haired and lacking energy. The speaker here implores her to take down this book, likely the collection of poems that holds this poem, and read in order to be reminded of her former glories. Whereas in the second stanza, the speaker characterizes the addressee's youth in terms of how loud she is, suggesting that youth is a kind of attractive force that brings other people into its orbit. According to the speaker, people love the addressee's glad greets and beauty. But the poem then links aging to sorrow, suggesting that the addressee's changing face over the years will reflect an internal sadness that comes with the loss of youth. In the third stanza, the loss of youth also seems to cut short an possibility of love. Love in this future scenario has fled from the addressee. Like youthful looks, love is a kind of present absence in the addressee's old age, that is, it's felt deeply because of the fact that it's no longer there. In this way, poet William Butler Yeats combined these three stages of life with a beautiful, very short three stanzas. Further, if you observe the poem very keenly, you can find a kind of a warning for the addressee in his poem when you are old. Warning for the future. Of course, this is all viewed through the perspective of the speaker. It's not necessarily true that the addressee will have to spend old age looking back nostalgically on her youth. But the poem seems to imply that this is likely given how the addressee's current life is governed by things that will vanish over time. That is what? The beauty and youthful energy, along with that, those people who loved her for the appearance or the physique or the physical beauty or the figure of that lady. All in all, when you are old paints a pessimistic picture of old age, suggesting that it's a time of melancholic reflection and regret, particularly for those who focused on shallow forms of love in their youth. It's up to the reader, of course, to decide whether this argument rings true, especially as the poem was written by a young man. But he tells clearly to the addressee here in this poem that one day she is going to miss all the glory, that beauty, because of what other people loved her. At the same time, the energy, the youth, and when she becomes old, she feels loneliness. Then only the poem which is being written by the poet can help her or can accompany her. So indirectly he is warning her. Today that lady or that addressee has rejected her, but in the future that addressee will definitely paint, or that addressee definitely miss the glories of that true love. So dear friends, these three themes we can easily identify in this short poem of William Butler Yeats, When You Are Old. So friends, this is all about the themes of When You Are Old, and in the next video we will discuss the poem, and hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Thank you once again.